This happened in late 2022. I'd been looking for ways to make some extra money. My full-time job wasn't cutting it, and I figured I'd give DoorDash a try. I signed up, went through the setup, and was approved within a couple days. The app was ready to go, but for almost a month, I never actually started. I just kept putting it off. One night, after getting home from work, I was sitting around bored. It was that weird kind of night, too tired to be productive, but too restless to sleep. I figured there was no better time to test the waters. The first few deliveries were fine. A couple fast food places, a pizza run. It was quiet, easy, nothing eventful. After about 2 hours, I was starting to get into the rhythm of things. I even thought to myself that this was kind of peaceful. It was around 12:10 a.m. when a new order came in, and it was different. This one was from a McDonald's, the only one in my town that's open 24/7. But what caught my attention wasn't the food. It was the tip. The app showed something around $38, which was more than I'd made all night. It was a no-brainer. I accepted it right away. The McDonald's was about 10 minutes from where I was, right on the edge of town, next to the highway. When I got there, the order was already bagged and ready, like the customer had been waiting on it. The delivery address popped up the moment I confirmed the pickup. That's when I noticed something. The drop-off point wasn't in town. It was way outside, off a long stretch of highway that pretty much led to nowhere. It took less than 2 minutes for my phone to ring. It was the customer. I answered, and the guy on the other end sounded impatient. Mid-30s maybe. His voice was rough, and he didn't bother saying hello or anything. He just asked me to confirm the address. I read it off the screen. After I finished, there was a pause. Just silence. I asked if that was correct, and without saying anything else, he hung up. That moment stuck with me more than I realized at the time. There was something in the silence, like he was listening for something, or thinking about something. Either way, it made the whole thing feel off. I kept driving. The road stretched ahead of me like it never ended. Once I was fully out of town, I noticed how isolated everything felt. There were no streetlights, just 2-lane asphalt cutting through thick woods and open fields. Even the occasional houses stopped showing up. The address was another 15 minutes out. I saw maybe one other car the entire time. The fog started to roll in heavy the farther I got. It wasn't like normal fog, though it was thick low and seemed to cling to the ground. The road had no shoulder, no exits, just endless blacktop and that gray mist. A GPS finally told me to turn. It was an unmarked dirt path, and I almost missed it. I turned in slowly. It wasn't even a driveway. Really, more like 2 tire ruts cutting through a field of tall grass. I rolled down my window to make sure I wasn't imagining it, but all I could hear was wind. The kind of dead, dry wind that made the grass sway, but didn't cool the air. The path felt longer than it was. About 100 yards in, I finally saw the house. It looked like something out of an old horror movie. A single farmhouse, sitting in the middle of this field, completely alone. 2 stories with a wraparound porch and peeling white paint. One window upstairs had a light on. The rest of the house was dark. The address matched. I parked near the porch and grabbed the food. Even stepping out of the car, the silence was oppressive. No crickets, no trees rustling, just stillness and the sound of my own breathing. I walked up to the porch. The floorboards creaked under my feet. I raised my hand to knock, and just before I touched the door, it swung open a few inches. I froze. From somewhere inside, a voice called out. A man's voice. The same one from the phone. "You the DoorDash guy?" I said yeah, and offered to leave the food on the porch. But he replied right away, "Just bring it in." Counters right through the hallway in the kitchen. He sounded annoyed again. No thank you, no warmth. Just like I was inconveniencing him. For some stupid reason, I stepped inside. Just a few steps. Enough to cross the threshold. The house smelled like mildew and wood rot. The kind of smell that clings to your clothes. That's when music started playing. It came from deeper inside. A piano, something old. Not upbeat, not creepy either, but loud. Like way louder than it should have been. "Hello?" I called out. "Sir?" No answer. The hallway in front of me led toward what looked like the kitchen. But the light didn't reach that far. I suddenly had this tight feeling in my chest. My instincts started screaming. Something was wrong. I took a step forward and stopped. The music kept playing, but the house was still otherwise silent. That's when I noticed it. The other rooms branching off from the hallway were all dark. I thought I saw something shift in the shadows of one room. Just barely, but I couldn't be sure. I bent down and set the bag on the floor, and then I turned to leave. As I got close to the door, my heart dropped. There was someone standing just inside the hallway, near the door. It was the man. He was maybe 6 feet away, half lit by the light from the porch. I could see his eyes, wide open, unblinking, and fixated on me. He didn't say anything. I could tell he'd been moving quietly, like he was waiting, sneaking. And I'm almost positive there was something in his hand. I didn't wait to find out. I bolted out of the house, slammed the door behind me, and sprinted to my car. I could hear the floorboards behind me creaking as I ran. Once inside my car, I reversed onto the dirt path and didn't stop until I hit the highway again. The fog swallowed the house behind me. I deleted the DoorDash app that night. Looking back, it's obvious what he was doing. The music? Probably just to cover his footsteps. He wanted me to walk deeper into that house, to pass the front door, so he could close it behind me. That image of him standing in the hallway, completely still, with that cold stare, still sticks with me. If I'd been just 5 seconds slower, I don't know what would have happened, but I'm glad I didn't find out. Before we continue, do me a quick favor. Tap that like button, hit subscribe, and share this video with a friend who needs to see it. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I love hearing from you. All right, let's get back to it. I was 28, living alone in a small city after getting laid off from the job I'd had for years. The only real job that ever gave my life any structure. Once it was gone, I didn't really know what to do with myself. I didn't have a backup plan, so I figured I'd just take whatever came next. Just something to kill time while I tried to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do now. That's how I ended up taking a front desk position at a small motel off the highway, about 30 minutes outside of the city. It was the kind of place you'd only stop at if you were too tired to keep driving. No restaurants nearby, no shops, just a shut-down diner next door that hadn't served food in probably 5 years. And this long stretch of highway, in both directions with nothing but trees on either side. I trained for a couple days with a guy who usually worked the shifts, but this was my first real night working alone. The first few hours were slow. The kind of slow where you start counting the number of cars that pass by, just so your brain doesn't go numb. A few guests came in, same routine, check ID, take payment, hand over the key, smile, nod. Most of them looked exhausted, barely made eye contact, except for one woman. She came in fast, eyes darting behind her like someone was following her. She rushed through the check-in, barely said anything, grabbed the key from my hand, and disappeared into one of the far rooms. It was strange enough to stick in my mind, but I didn't dwell on it. Not at first. Maybe 40 minutes passed, maybe more, when the door opened again. A man stepped inside, and right away I knew something was off. I hadn't seen or heard a car pull in. He looked like he just appeared out of nowhere, like he'd walked in from the trees or from the dark side of the lot, where no lights touched. He didn't smile, didn't greet me, just asked how much for a room. I told him the rate, asked if he wanted one for the night. He hesitated, like he wasn't expecting me to ask that, like he didn't actually want a room. His eyes kept flicking behind me, toward the wall of hooks where the room keys hung. He stared for a second too long before saying, "Never mind," and turning to leave. The whole thing left me feeling unsettled. After he walked out, I looked behind me, trying to see what exactly he was staring at. And of course, it was just the keys. I told myself maybe he thought it was weird we still used physical keys. Maybe he was just tired. Maybe this job was already making me paranoid. I waited, watching the door, expecting to see him leave in a car, but nothing. No sound, no headlights, no taillights fading into the night. Just nothing. Like he never came in at all. Eventually, I walked to the front window and scanned the lot. Just the few guest cars that had already checked in. The man wasn't anywhere. I even looked out toward the highway, but it was dead out there. No cars, no movement. I sat back down behind the desk. I kept thinking about how isolated I was out here, how nobody would hear a thing if something went wrong. That's when the phone rang. I picked it up fast, more out of nerves than anything. It was the woman from earlier, the one who rushed in. Her voice was shaky. She said someone was standing outside her door, and he wouldn't leave. I grabbed the spare key, told her to stay inside, and headed straight there. The guy was already gone by the time I got out there, but I knocked anyway, and she opened the door looking like she hadn't slept in days. She told me he didn't say anything, just stood there staring at her through the window. She tried asking him to leave, but he didn't move, didn't react. When she described him, I felt something tighten in my chest. It was him, same guy. I asked if she wanted me to call the cops, but she quickly shut that down. Sighed she didn't want to make things worse. Just wanted to get through the night and leave in the morning. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Who was this guy? Why was he walking around out here with no car? Just appearing and disappearing like he belonged in the dark. I sat back behind the desk, eyes glued to the lot. Time dragged. At some point, maybe 2 hours later, I heard the noise. It started subtle, like muffled movement, but then I heard crashing. Thuds against walls. A loud, sharp bang. Then another. I bolted out of the office, heart pounding, sprinted across the lot to her room. Her door was wide open. Inside, she was backed up against the wall, trying to get around him, but he had her cornered. I shouted something. I don't even remember what I said, but the man turned, face twisted with rage, and ran straight toward me. I stumbled back, racing for impact, but he didn't hit me. He ran past, out into the parking lot, straight across the highway, then into the woods. I made sure the woman was okay, brought her back into the office. That's when I called the police. Later, I found out the guy had stolen a spare key from the hook wall. Sometime earlier, when I was distracted, he must have come back inside, grabbed it, and waited. What's worse, the woman lied. She knew him. He was her ex-husband. Violent, unstable. She was trying to get away from him. And I guess she thought if she didn't involve the cops, maybe it would all just blow over. It didn't. He followed her. And if I had been 5 minutes later, maybe even less, Who knows how far he would have taken it. I kept the job for a few months, but that night never left my head. Not just because of what almost happened, but because I saw something in that man's eyes. Something hollow, like hurting her wasn't the end goal, like she was just step one. My name's Maxine, and back when this happened, I had just turned 23. I'd moved to a small town about an hour north of where my parents lived, close enough that I could visit, but far enough that I didn't have to live in the city like they wanted. I'd been floating between jobs for a while and was running low on money. So the moment I got settled into my apartment, I started looking for work. Didn't take long to find a job opening at a local grocery store. I'd worked in one before, back in high school, so I figured this would be easy enough. The place was small, definitely not a chain store. It looked like something that had been around for decades, and I'd never heard of it until I saw the listing. I applied, and not even 3 hours later, I got a call from someone named John. He didn't ask much, just a few basic questions, and told me I was hired. No interview, no in-person chat. Just show up on Tuesday night. On the phone, something about him already felt off. His voice was polite, but stiff, like he was reading from a script or trying to copy how people talk. I couldn't put my finger on it, but there was something about the way he paused, or how overly cheerful his tone was, that made my skin itch. He told me it was for a night shift stocking position, which I'd never done before, but I said yes anyway. I didn't have the luxury of being picky. I got there around 9:30 p.m. The store was closed. The lights were mostly off, and the parking lot was completely empty except for one car. John was standing inside the glass doors, just watching me. He opened them as I approached and said my name, like he'd been waiting all day just to say it. He was taller than I expected, maybe 6'2", broad, with a buzz cut and a thick beard, but it was the way he smiled that threw me. It was too wide, too perfect, like he practiced it in the mirror. He didn't waste time. We walked through the store, which looked way more rundown on the inside than I expected. Dust on the shelves, stains in the aisles, old lights that buzzed overhead, and an overall smell like wet cardboard and cleaning, supplies that never did their job. He brought me to the office in the back, where I filled out paperwork. While I was writing, he made small talk, asked how long I'd been in town, whether I had family nearby, if I lived alone, how I got there that night, and if anyone was picking me up later. He said it all casually, like they were standard questions, but there was something about the way he asked them that made me give vague answers. I didn't want to lie, but I also didn't want him knowing too much. I left my bag and jacket in the office and followed him to the first aisle, where a cart of boxes was waiting. He gave me a basic rundown of what to do and then left me alone. I got to work. The job itself was fine. Nothing complicated, just open boxes, stock the shelves. But it didn't take long before I noticed something strange. I'd be focused on what I was doing, then look up and see him at the end of the aisle, just standing there, watching me. He wouldn't say anything, just stare for a few seconds, then walk away without a word. It happened more than once. I tried brushing it off, told myself maybe he was just checking in, trying to be sure I was doing things right. But there was something about the way he kept appearing without making a sound, then leaving without saying anything. That made it feel less like supervision and more like surveillance. I started to get uneasy. The silence in the store felt heavier by the hour, and the creaks in the floor and faint buzz from the lights started to feel like they were hiding something behind them. Then around 2 in the morning, I saw him again, standing at the edge of the aisle with that same smile. But this time, he didn't just walk off. He started walking toward me. "What do you say we take our 15 now?" He said. "Been a long night already." I said sure, not realizing he meant the break would be outside. He led me through the back of the store to this heavy metal door. It opened into a small delivery area behind, the building with a few dumpsters and one car parked under a flickering light. As soon as we stepped outside, that car pulled away. John leaned against the wall and lit a cigarette. I stood a few feet away, looking out at the trees just past the edge of the lot. I could feel him staring at me. Not watching, staring. He didn't say anything. Just stood there, smoking. The silence between us wasn't relaxed or casual. It was like something was waiting. I wanted to go back inside. I wanted to say I forgot something in the break room, even though I hadn't seen one. But before I could say anything, a car pulled into view from around the corner of the building. It was the same car that had just left. It slowed down, not passing, just easing toward us. I glanced at John to see if he noticed, and I'll never forget the look on his face. He wasn't surprised. He wasn't confused. He was just staring at me, cold and still, like the car didn't matter at all. My gut twisted. I didn't wait. I turned and rushed back through the door, slammed it shut behind me, and ran down the hallway toward the office. I had to grab my stuff. I had to get out. But when I got there, everything was gone. My bag, my jacket, my keys, nothing was where I left it. It was like I'd never been there. I heard footsteps behind me, more than one pair, and they were getting closer. I didn't look back. I ran. Through the store, past the aisles, through the front doors, and into the night. The nearest place I remembered was a gas station about 5 minutes down the road. I didn't stop running until I got there and had them call the police. Even after I was safe, I still questioned myself. Maybe I overreacted. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe the car was just someone leaving and coming back. But when the cops checked the store, everything I said was true. My bag was back in the office, like it had never been moved. John claimed I must have misplaced it. He denied anyone ever pulled into the lot. And when they checked the security cameras, the only one that wasn't recording was the one behind the building. Of course, there was no proof of anything, no crime, no suspect, no answers. I broke my lease the next day and stayed with my parents. I don't know what was going to happen that night, or why he seemed to want me off the books, like I never existed, but I trusted my gut. And I didn't stick around to find out what he was planning.